I find diving super therapeutic because it slows me down. There's not a lot of distractions, and it's kind of distills you down, your emotional state, your thought process, your problem solving. It all slows down.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Most certified divers began their pursuit as an extension of their leisure activities. Certified on holiday, certified out of curiosity, certified by their choosing. Don Mirra became certified as part of his military training. What began as a mission-driven task has now evolved into a meditative, blissful, serene experience. From military to recreational to technical diving, sidemount, solo diving, DPVs, homemade rum, but most importantly, taking the time to stop and smell the corals. Please enjoy. Don, how are you doing this wonderful morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast, man. It's really awesome.
Oh, no, man, I've been looking forward to this one. And I was just saying offline, we'll have to do a in-person recording next time I'm in your area. But as I was saying the last time that we drank together, I was definitely hurting for a couple days afterwards. I got to stop trying to hang out with the big boys, dude.
I'm half Scottish and I'm half Sicilian, so I move through booze like a wood chipper.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was actually a great conversation, and I had a lot of fun. And before I ask my first question, so if you don't mind me asking, you like to partake in making some rum. So you're Scottish, but you make rum. That's an interesting one.
So while I'm half Scottish and half Sicilian, I was raised in America, and actually the history of American spirit is rum. Not well-known fact is it wasn't so much the Boston Tea Party's taxation on tea that really triggered the revolution. It was actually the taxation of sugar, molasses, and rum in the colonies to the crown that really caused a lot of the founding fathers to basically succeed. And incidentally, almost all of them were eventually assassinated. Everybody that signed the Declaration of Independence, almost all of them. Benjamin Franklin wasn't, I know that, but so rum is a little bit of an easier spirit to actually make, and it's easy to do in your house or, in like a corner of your garage. It's just molasses, yeast, water, patience, and then 2 distillations. I mean, it's way faster than wine and way faster than beer. So, the irony is there's a lot of science to it, but there is a real craft. There's an artisan or art, it's a bit of an art. You're dealing with something that's alive. Yeast becomes alive, and so you kind of nurture this yeast and temperature and ratios. And it's been a neat experience. I've been doing it for almost 10 years. I also make gin and I make vodka. But like you were asking, why Scottish? Why aren't you making like whiskey? Or it's really hard. That's the truth, right? People make spirits based on where they can get sugar, right? Oh, but then you got to crack the wheat, you got to heat the wheat. Then you need a huge vessel to get enough alcohol by volume to run the still. And so the downstream effect of that is that and then there's mixing of the different wheats and the different rye and the different and the reason why they make it from that stuff is they don't grow sugar cane in Scotland. They grow wheats and barleys, And there's not a lot of sugar in those. Like, that's why there's like in the United States, when they do bourbons and stuff, it's like corn and then some wheat and then some oat. They're mixing it all up to try and get a flavor profile, right? So that's a little bit on distilling. But I think if you're a diver, you should be enjoying spirits afterwards.
It's part of the decompression process. The off-gassing process.
I'm a fan. I'm a fan.
That's it's super interesting. I was actually, it was funny when I heard that you made rum because it was like, oh, you make rum. It kind of the pieces were starting to fit together. But no, I had a really good time. There was a great conversation, and I look forward to the next time we meet up, and we'll have to do a recording over some spirits. But my first question my second question, I should say, that I'd like to ask you is, tell me why and how you became a diver. Tell me about that first breath underwater. What led to that moment? Was it a moment of amazingness? Was it, I absolutely hate this? Was it, this is okay, I think I could do this? Tell me all about it.
My first breath underwater was a combination of, this is really cool, and this is terrifying. What's going to happen now? And the reason why was that I did not go to like a PADI or a NAUI or SSI or anything like that. I went to military dive school. So I learned to dive the military way. And I didn't go to the Navy's program. I went to the Army Special Forces Combat Diver Qualification course. And so just a quick background, the United States Army has a group of people that can insert into a given location using clandestine, surreptitious underwater means if they need to. And so they use at the time, they used the LAR-5 rebreather by Dreger, which is 100% oxygen rebreather. And it's a very shallow, right? It's like 5 meters max, maybe 8 meters, but you're going from point A to point B swimming in a clandestine way and inserting into an area to do combat operations. And the irony is, I was a force recon Marine at the time, and this was before it transitioned into what everybody now knows as the Marine Raiders, which is the Marine Special Forces designated unit. So the unit I was in was the Force Reconnaissance Company, which was a very small group of people. Worldwide at my time, there were only about 455 certified operational force recon Marine assaulters and reconnaissance. And the Marines got a class seat. My platoon sergeant said, well, I got a guy that'll make it, because it's notoriously a very hard program. And so my platoon sergeant said, Don, you're going to Special Forces Dive School, and you can't fail. I went, wow, no pressure. So there was a pre-scuba that was run there at the actual unit. That was actually quite helpful. You learn a lot about the basics of dealing with, clearing your mask and how to fin properly, how to set up your tanks, things like that, so that when you got to dive school, there was some stuff that wasn't brand new and it didn't become overwhelming. Not that that really helped, because you were overwhelmed at that course. So the course is it's extremely hard, and it's very fast-paced. And the reason why is they're there to train you to dive and to qualify you as a combat diver. They are not there to teach you how to be a swimmer or how to be a better swimmer. To give you an example, every morning, very early in the morning, there were these runs you would go on. You had a slow run day, and then you had a rocket run day. Obviously, the rocket run is shorter, the longer run is longer. And I'll remember we started out with, I think, 65 students. I think that sounds about right. 65, maybe 70, maybe 71. You check in on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday afternoon, you meet up in the classroom, and there's like a class brief. And it all seems like a gentleman's course, no pressure, nothing, no hazing, nothing. Boy, I'll tell you, an hour after that briefing, the shit hit the fan. I was like, whoa, that was a change in policy right over. Oh, my God. It was unbelievable. I hadn't experienced that kind of pressure ever in the military. It was astonishing. About a week, let's see, that was a Sunday. So that Sunday is when it started, right? On that Friday morning, okay, we go for the Friday rocket run. And I'm looking around and I'm going, man, there's a lot less people here. I think half of us are gone. I was like, it was the runs are not, they're not a group run. You're just out jogging together. You're like in a formation, right? Running. And I was like, dude, this formation's a lot smaller. Now, to just quantify so I did find out about 35% of the original student body had dropped within the first week or been dropped. Now, to quantify this, these are not kids just joining the Army. These are sergeants, maybe even a staff sergeant that's already a Green Beret. He's already been through the entire 2.5-year training pipeline and gotten what's called tabbed as a Green Beret. Some of these guys have already done deployments. They've been around. Some of these guys have been in the Army Special Forces for 5 to 6 years, and then they go. This isn't like buds where these guys are brand new. they've never done anything. Like these guys have done hard shit. They might have been through SF Sears School. They might be an 18 Delta, which is like a mini doctor program for the Army Special Forces medics. They might be a weapons specialist. And they were dropping these guys like flies. I was really, really surprising.
So there's somebody dropping them, or are they by themselves quitting? Or does someone come up and say, you're not cut out for this?
Hey, straight up, I'm going to be really honest and transparent. I was so focused on not getting dropped or getting hurt, I don't remember a lot of the reasons why guys got dropped. What I remember is that some guys were failing tests, some guys were failing evaluations, some guys could not handle being underwater. The drop process, Nick, was multifactorial. I don't remember, it was a long time ago, I don't remember if somebody just raised their hand and quit. That was an Army guy. There were some PJs there that were going through dive school, and my PJ that was assigned to me, because you're on the swim, you have a buddy swim buddy, right? You've always got somebody next to you. So let me back up for a second. On the second day, you do this 500 meter open water individual swim for time. The fastest and second fastest guy, they're paired. The third and fourth fastest guy, they're paired, and goes down the line. I was the fastest guy at Special Forces Dive School that year. And for the next 21 years, I had the fastest swim time. I grew up in the water, and especially with fins on, yeah, I'm pretty fast. So, I mean, I'm old now. I couldn't do those times, but, I'm not a prideful person, but it was like, damn, man. So my guy that I got paired with, which was the second fastest swimmer of that open water class swim, he quit during the Friday morning, essentially underwater skills stress assessment, which is where you and your buddy are underwater and instructors come and they rip your mask off, they turn your air off, they pull your fin off, and you're just having to come back and reconsolidate the whole time. It's a form of stress and training to get you ready for the next phase, which is that next Monday you start closed circuit operations. So by day 6 of the program, you're on a rebreather.
So the training process, I'm assuming, obviously, because there's a lot higher stakes, but that first week, essentially, they're literally just trying to put you through the ringer to filter people out. Like, okay, welcome, you guys came. You're not cut out for this. The cream of the crop moves forward. But I guess from say, I don't know if this is a dumb question, but from a recreational standpoint, right? Recreational scuba diving, they're focused on one thing. What would you say the biggest focus was? Basically how to not die under stressful situations rather than, how to not die in recreational fun setting? Does that question kind of make sense?
Yeah, so what's the parallel and what's the overlap? Well, I think one thing's for sure, right? Water is a hostile environment to Homo sapiens, just like space is a hostile environment to Homo sapiens. Okay, so being underwater is very dangerous for us, regardless of how you feel, right? Like I've told people this before, if you're in combat and you didn't get shot at or shot or a bomb go off or a bomb blow part of you off, still doesn't make it a safe place. It's fucking dangerous, whether bad things have happened or not. And so in the course that first week, what they're really trying to basically say is, these are the wickets, these are the little gates that you got to pass to be able to get on the LAR-5 rebreather and start to do the mission. That's what that comes down to. So let's be very, very transparent. The recreational dive world is technically not about making divers, but about getting people to dive so they can come on trips, and the people that host the trips can use those divers as money funnels. That's the truth. No one wants to admit that, right? Nobody does. But I'm like, come on, let's be serious. And so in this case, though, there is a certain degree of safety that has to happen. And that's why when you look at the PADI instructor manual, it's not written by a diver, it's written by an attorney so that he can litigate out lawsuits so that PADI stays a very cash positive company that is then bought and sold by private equity firms to offset their debt to equity ratio and be able to borrow money at a cheaper rate, and then they'll sell PADI off after 18 months. A lot of people might disagree with me, and that's fine. It's okay. It's all right. I don't mind. Because I've got no dog in that fight, But the thing about the training in There's a lot of similarities. Like you got to be able to clear your mask. If your regulator falls out of your mouth, you got to be able to put air. Where's your air and how do you get to back? If you have to go to the surface, how do you go to the surface? There was a lot of similarities. How to use your fins properly. Why you don't use your hands, right? Definitely we got taught a lot of dangerous marine life classes. Every week there was dangerous marine life. Every week during that 5-week course. There were considerations on like, okay, let's talk about cold water insert. Let's talk about tropical water insert. Let's talk about night insert, night dives. How do you stay close to people? Hand and arm signals. The underwater environment, it's a great neutralizer. Everybody ends up becoming the same, right? In regards to the pressure put on you. Nobody gets an advantage underwater, okay? So the skills that we learned at SF Dive School translate directly to the civilian community, no problem. And in fact, if you had gone through a PADI course and then you had gone into the Army or a unit that has a dive program, you would have a huge hand up because you had already gone through a tremendous amount of the fundamentals. Really, the 80-20 rule, you can do 80% of what you want to do of anything with basically 20%, mastering 20% of those skill sets, right? And so moving into recreational was easier, In some ways it was also a little bit harder because the military set is a very narrow bandwidth. In other words, like of the spectrum of diving, it's very narrow. The people that are in that spectrum are, the world's best. Once you've been through programs similar to that, right? You're just on, it's incredible. But once you leave that, you don't know anything. Like I never knew anything about decompression diving. I never knew anything about stop, hover, and stare at like small fish. I didn't know how to do that. So I'm very humble about it. Like, yeah, I went through a really hard dive program, but it was based on this narrow bandwidth, right?
Take me a little bit more through once you reach the CC, like the actual closed circuit portion, what sort of training are you doing at that point? Because I'm assuming, like you were just saying, like everything that you're doing is with an emphasis of you're going into combat and you're trying to stay alive, but we're prepping you to go into combat. Is that right? Or is that?
Yeah, that's totally accurate. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. In the methodology, it is required that a team of operators go to a given location through the water with no bubbles, come to the surface without being detected, go and do their mission without being detected and go back in the water or get picked up by boat because the mission's over. They don't care if anybody finds out they're there. So that's kind of the broad view. So on that, once you start on the closed circuit rebreather, the Dregger, things start changing and emphasizing into insertion techniques and methodologies. So you have a man, one of the divers has a tack board. Imagine it's kind of like a serving tray with a compass, big Ritchie compass on it, and a depth gauge and a timer. The guy just holds that board with his elbows against his rib cage, staring at that Ritchie compass. He takes a heading, like a course heading, and moves a little bezel ring so that the north-seeking arrow goes into these two hash marks called the gate. You keep the horse in the gate or you keep the needle in the gate, and you just swim and hold that course. His buddy next to him is there to monitor what he's doing, to double check in case he starts spinning, getting vertigo, and also to maybe tow some equipment behind them. He might be pulling on that as he's swimming to tow equipment, like say weapons or explosives or a radio or whatever's determined to be mission essential. And if they're in large groups, there might be 4 guys. So one guy's driving and the other 3 are just kind of swimming along, and they're all on this buddy line, all connected, snapped into a line so that they can stay together. Because the water it's so easy to get separated in the water. And a lot of those dives are done in like lakes or streams, which are really murky, or harbors, things like that. So it basically comes down to what's known as compass swims. Not to go into like the whole curriculum, which I'd rather not get into, but essentially you have a morning dive where it's a 750-meter subsurface dive, and there's a target on the beach. You jump out of the water. The driver makes his heading on that target on the beach, like a big red flag or a big red post. And you guys go down, and then you get graded on how accurate you are on getting to that target. And so it's time and accuracy to the target. And then you get back in the boats. You literally walk down, get back in the boats. They take you back out. And then the guy that was driving now is riding, and the rider becomes the driver. So you do 2 dives in the morning. You get out. Then those dives are usually done. Then you might have a wash and cleaning period. And you usually, if it's not a big dive that day, you might have a follow-on class. For instance, weapons care for salt water. And you're building all of these skills so that when you leave the training environment, you can go to your unit and you're caught up. And then all you do is you take your skills and massage and nuance them to the unit's theater of operation and what its tasking is. Because maybe they never go in salt water. Maybe they're always freshwater. Maybe they only do harbor entries and ship work. So it just depends. And then you come back, and after chow or lunch, then you prep up for the rest of your classes and you get a mission brief. And then you go to dinner. And then when the sun sets, you go do the same dive at night. So every day dive also has a night dive. So you're doing 4 dives a day on pure oxygen. And so each day builds the further distance away from the target. It builds in more skills, dangerous marine life. It builds in weapons. It builds in dive medicine, more physics.
Thinking of like a military operation, I'm thinking, and I obviously have no military background. This is all from just shows that I've watched or movies or whatever. Thinking of like the team aspect, right? Like, you know, you are going in with a team. How many people is there a point where there's like too many people, or is it like always like, no, this is only a 4-person operation, this is only a 3-person operation, you know? Because like thinking of, like, I went into a cave one time, we had like 5 people. I'm like, this is way too fucking many people to be in here as like a team, you know? To me, like 2 people, maybe like 3, absolute max 3, right? And so I'm sure that there's complications there, because at some point, like, you can't just run a mission with 3 people. Or am I completely wrong in that assumption?
Well, I mean, the mission would dictate, and also depending on what you're trying to do. And I have strong opinions about insert methodologies and their place and strategy. A lot of people can get anchor bias, and in some cases, metric bias on how the mission should be run. My experience, and granted, it's just the unit I was in and the training I received, our teams weren't more than 6.
That's still quite a bit of people, right? To navigate. Yeah.
It is, because essentially, if you think about it, in my experience and my training with my unit, we didn't have more than 6 usually. We did have an instance where I think we had 8, and that was a nightmare, because you are on a buddy line, a swim line. So it's a long rope that has little T ropes coming off of it, and then little double enders that you clip into your rig, so you all stay together and you don't drift away from each other. And it's very hard. With 6 people, it was really hard, because the navigator, of course, the best guy is the navigator, right? The best navigator is the navigator, right? And by the time you start doing stuff like that, you know who's the best navigator. And one of the things about my unit was best idea wins, best person leads that part of the mission. So it wasn't what I would call, it wasn't like a dictatorship, like I'm in charge, I do everything, I tell you what to do. That wasn't my experience. But that being said, maybe other people do have that. As an example, the U.S. Navy SEALs SDV teams, that's a whole different world, man. Those guys are next level. I mean, they do some incredible things. They're very smart and they're very methodical. They train quite extensively because it is a very, very hard mission. And there's no glory. It's not a very glory-oriented mission. It's really demanding and not well known. So, you know, you get through that program, and man, when I graduated, it was a fucking relief. I mean, I think it was one of the biggest events in my life. When I got out of the military, I dove a little bit. I went to Honduras with a trip back in the days, and Roatan was nothing but a coconut farm. Now it's, you know, huge for diving. And I did some stuff down in Mexico, but I kind of took a hiatus from diving, and I became a climber. I started climbing big walls. So things like El Capitan in the winter, solo, really extreme stuff. I had a couple trips I was getting ready to go out of North America, and things just changed my life. I took a course correction. I did a little bit of diving when I was in the Mediterranean. You know, the Mediterranean was interesting because it was fucking dead. There's nothing alive down there. There's like no marine life. And it's like, wow, where do they get the fish for seafood? And then I dove in the Middle East. And that was different.
Oh, I'm sure. Coming out of the military, like the military diving, having that experience, now going into the recreational sport diving world where it's like, hey, this is just fun. Do you think that's why you stopped, because it wasn't as like appealing?
No, That's a good question, Nick. So I'd never paid to play. I was averse to that, you know. I had a 1-day climbing course in the military, and then I went climbing. And then I had a 1-day basic technique for big wall climbing, paid a guy $100, and he taught me for the day. And then I read a book, and then I just went out and did it. I never had a climbing guide. So I just have this natural aversion where I'm going to go pay $200 and go dive 2 places. I don't know what I'm looking at, and I'm hanging out with people I actually don't like. So I'm like, this is bullshit. And that's why when I started diving the Med and also in Aqaba, I just said, hey, I'm a military diver. I just want to dive with 1 or 2 people. I don't need any help, and that's what I did. And it was just a lot better, right? And, you could say, well, maybe my military experience, scarred me or made me arrogant. I guess that's a totally subjective point of view. I don't know. But I know the one thing, getting in the water is optional, but getting out's not. And I don't want to dive with people who don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And they may not know what they're doing, and it may not actually be their fault. They don't know. They're a lawyer warrior and weekend warrior. They want to go see cool shit in the water, which, hey man, like more power to them. I wish more people would go and get in the water, to be honest. It is a time machine. People forget what they're looking at. A lot of people don't realize that most of the reefs that you're going to see are only 5,000 years old because of the increasing of sea level after the Ice Age. Number 2, almost everything you're looking at is like tens of millions of years old. Those barrel sponges, that's a 375 million old species, and it's an animal. I could stare at a barrel sponge all day. I don't care. It's just so cool. Because every single one of them, oh, that's a barrel sponge. That's what it looks like. They're all different, man. You ever seen the ones that look like a taco? They're all folded because they're in a really strong current area. So it kind of like presses them. It's like a trip, man. Or the ones that look like they're falling over like a melted candle. Like, come on. It's like everything's... I dive a lot of the same sites so many times, and it's always a different dive. That's why I'm like not necessarily sold on diving around the world. I'm like, dude, you go to the same dive site, you're going to see something different every time.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But for going into the reason why I really like to dive is I just thought it was really cool. And even on training missions or mission dives, I'd notice something and be like, wow, that's really neat looking. Look at that fish. Or in the case of when I was in Florida, that's a really big bull shark swimming right next to me. Thinking that I was a bull shark, I don't know, I'm taking a guess. I mean, those things barely have a brain. I lived in Okinawa, Japan, and I saw the brain of a great white shark, and I saw the brain of a dolphin. And it was like the difference between the brain of a human being and the brain of an iguana. It was like the most simple, primitive thing. It's just like a sensory eat machine.
What brought you back in? So you got away from diving, because you're a pretty avid diver now. Like where did the passion start to grow where it's like, you know what, I actually do like this. I want to start pursuing it a little bit more?
Well, one was my time down in Mexico. I started diving some really unique little private spots that a friend of mine said, hey, we should go here. He had a small little teeny Zodiac, and so we did some cool dives. This is a long time. This is about like 14 years ago, I guess. So and I had a really good time there. That was really good for me. The water was warm. It was reasonably clear, pretty clear. And there was a lot of large fish, a lot of tuna. Just the surrounding marine life was just really healthy. It was a good reef. It was off the beaten track. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. And then I ended up getting a job in Okinawa, Japan for a year as a military contractor. And just the way that the contract was, I worked in these big spurts, like 10, 12-hour days, 6 days in a row. And then I have all this time off because of the way the contract was written. So I did a lot of diving, just shore diving in Okinawa, and the water was just so clear, like 20, 30-meter viz was normal. And because of its geology subsurface, its topographic, it was just insane. So I just dove a lot. And because I was part of a dive club, essentially you get 2 tanks a day for free. You just got to be able to get to the dive site. So I bought a nice streamlined, very minimalist kit. Only had to wear a rubber probably 4 months of the year. The rest of the time I would just wear a skin and shorts. I really got into the marine life. I started really looking at fish. And that kind of spawned this idea of one thing that you can do to make your dive force multiplied meaning magnify its value, is to actually know what you're looking at. So as an example, if you were to go on a safari, it'd be good to know kind of the life cycle and general behavior patterns of a giraffe or a Cape buffalo, or how does a lion pride really work? Why is it they lay around all the time? Because that way, when you see them interact with them, it's so much more dimensional. Well, the same thing goes for underwater. The only thing is underwater, the shallow reef environments are incredibly complicated. Not only that, but you have fish that change their appearance based on their age, like sweet lips. You think it's like a black and white clownfish with big fins, but no, that's actually a juvenile sweet lip, spotted sweet lip. So I started learning a lot more about that and spending a lot more time shooting underwater video of different types of marine life. And there was a lot of turtles where we happened to dive a lot of the time, and also soft corals. Oh my God. I think it was June, July, August on the west side of the island, a place called Cadena Steps. The soft coral garden is unreal. It's the shit of dreams. It's the same thing with another set of islands in the Ryoko island chain called the Karamas. That's another soft coral garden area that's just next level, man. Like, it's just incredible. So beautiful. You're like, is this for real? And then I would learn, what is that? What is that life cycle? How does that thing grow? How does it breed? What are its limitations? And that got me so inspired. And I find diving super therapeutic because it slows me down. There's not a lot of distractions. And it's kind of distills you down, your emotional state, your thought process, your problem solving. It all slows down. That to me is very, very mentally healthy and provides me a tremendous amount of joy and peace that when I'm on the surface, the rest of the day and a few days after that, I'm just a much better person.
The therapeutic side of it, I definitely completely agree. And, back many moons ago when I was an instructor, I'd actually met quite a few people that were former military. They took up diving as a way to, I'm not going to say solve their problems or anything, but I, definitely think that diving can solve a lot of the world's problems. But they took up diving because it was a way for them to kind of, like you're saying, find peace, find find something like a meditative type state to kind of help them with whatever that they might have been dealing with. And I definitely feel that I don't know if there's, I'm sure that there are organizations out there that do that, but I definitely feel that, you get in the water and you're breathing, especially on a rebreather. I mean, shit, I'm new to the rebreather world, but even in open circuit, when you first get into open circuit, it's such a peaceful. That was why I got into it, because I was like, it's always so quiet down here. I was working in loud machine shops and dealing with traffic, living in the city, and there's just always a lot of loud noise. You get under the water and nobody can talk to you. It's peaceful.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It's meditative, and that's why absolutely one of the many reasons why I love diving.
Yeah, the type of diving that I do now is really, really enjoyable for me because essentially I like doing deep underwater scooter transit dives. I'll go into a dive site and just hug the shore or the bottom at 35 to 45 meters left shoulder. I reach my whatever I want time to surface requirement, and then I'll just turn around, ascend up to my first gas switch gas, and just transit back. The transit back is always shorter than the transit out because of where you are in relationship to the shore, because you're closer. So now you get to slow down and you're decompressing in what looks like an aquarium sometimes. It's just next level, man. There's some dive sites here where I'm diving in Bali on a regular basis. I'm doing like 7 dive sites on one dive. It's just mind-blowing. I come out of the water and I'm like, God, I feel like I did something wrong. It's so good. I feel guilty of too much pleasure. So the DPV is something that has been a game changer for me as a diver. I do almost exclusively. I think last summer I swam where I guided a few divers for 2 days. No, 1 day. 2 dives in 1 day. And then I just went right back to the DPV. I just find it just fantastic. Just the amount of distance you can cover, you can stop, you can see more things. it also is really wonderful to do with a buddy because I do dive alone quite a bit, and I do decompression dives alone, and I'm very conservative, incidentally. So anybody that's listening that thinks that's super dangerous, and I'm like, if I were going to run the math, it's more dangerous for the hour and 40-minute motorcycle ride I do from where I live to the dive sites than the dive is, right? Because there's much more under my control, and my equipment has such reliability standards that unless I have a freak embolism or, just croak underwater or get attacked by something, which, God, that's like super rare. You got a better chance of getting struck by lightning. So diving a DPV with a partner is just next level fun. It's so great. I encourage anybody that can get a good DPV, not the little play ones where you hold on with your hands. Those are really kind of dumb. And I just said that out loud. Again, I don't have any dog in the fight. I don't own stock. I'm not a shop. I don't fucking care.
It's something that I've been wanting. Actually, I swear, like there's always the next carrot, I should say. But yeah, the more that I've been seeing DPVs, the more that I hear about them and talk to people, it's something that is on the cards. And yeah, it's something that I definitely want to look into. So these days, you're mostly in a side mount configuration. When did you gravitate towards that? How did you find, like, what prompted you to want to go into a side mount configuration?
So originally, I did twin set back mount in the military. And that, to me, was just sheer ass pain. I hated that crap. And I'm not even going to know why, but I'll just tell you this. No padding on the 1-inch wide straps. I just leave it at that. Okay? I'll just leave it there. It fucking sucked. Oh, God, I just think about that. It's like trauma. So, going to single tank, my club only had aluminum 80s. I was thinking about getting like a big steel, because I'm a bigger person. I'm kind of like a large game animal. So I naturally consume more gas per breath. My lungs don't fit on a regular X-ray. They got to do 2 because the lobes are too long. But when, I think it was right around 2019, around October, guy that I worked with who was an ANDP instructor and also was the Okinawan Trident rebreather instructor. He said, "Hey man, you should go side mount." And I'm like, "Really? Tell me more." And he just sent me to a YouTube channel called Side Mounting, and it was run by Steve Martin. And so I'm watching this guy do, just like sitting here in like a cenote. He's hovering and he's going backwards when he's finning, and he's like doing a helicopter turn, and he never moves. He's like suspended like a free faller. And I went, now that's cool. Then I see a video on why doing side mount off a boat is so great, right? Because you just hand your tanks up and you get out of the water with no weight. People don't know this, but when you're diving, technically speaking, a good portion of your muscle tissue becomes completely asleep. So it's actually really easy to hurt yourself getting out of the water, regardless of how much weight you have. You can do something, right? So I kind of got turned on, and then the same guy that turned me on to it, I said, that's really interesting, Matt. I really appreciate you sending me that. And he said, so-and-so wants to sell his razor harness. And I went, what? He goes, yeah. So I went down there. I bought this kind of half-ass built razor with some homemade shit on it for like $250. And it was fit for some like dwarf, and I'm a fucking Yeti. So I'm sitting here trying to size it, and when it's dry, and I'm just like it's just like crushing my soul trying to get this fucking webbing to move. And so I get this kind of idea. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to soak it in soapy water. So I put like a half a cup of dishwashing liquid in a little basin and put the harness in there. And the soapy water, when it was wet, I could start sliding it. So here I am wearing like a pair of swim trunks and a rash guard, getting full of soap in the mirror in my bathroom, dripping all this soapy water everywhere, trying to get this thing to fit right. And so I get it to fit right. And I actually show it to Matt, and he's like, dude, this looks like someone fitted it for you. How'd you do it? And I said, well, I just looked at the video, and then I looked at where it was on my body on the mirror, and I figured it looked right. He goes, dude, that's incredible. It wasn't quite that simple, to be honest, Nick. I did have to, what I did was I ended up signing up for Steve Martin's full course program. And I will say this, he's been very good to me as a full-blown 100% disabled American veteran. That guy hooked me up. Much respect out to him Steve Martin, and also Voss Proud. Those are stand-up guys. Man, if I were going to be a technical dive instructor or a side mount instructor, that would be the cadre I would want to associate with. That's how good they are, right? And if nobody's seen their products, I highly recommend it. Anything. There is not a single thing on their website that is not worth the money. And that's not a plug for them. Again, I got nothing out of that. Nothing. The guys are just next level. To give you an example, I messaged Voss Proud and sent him photos through Facebook Messenger. I don't have Facebook anymore. I got rid of that crap. But he got back to me and he goes, you should do this and this and this, and said, good luck. Like so many other parasitic, non-contributing zeros would charge me. Fucking pricks. You know, it's like, I'll pay my heart surgeon who spent 18 years, but because you did a little side mount instructor course and now you want $80 to size my harness, go fuck yourself. So anyway, I got into side mount because it looked like a really great configuration. It made a lot of sense to me. And so I signed up for his course. I got a GoPro with a little, like those gorilla pods, you know, the funny looking spider links for the tripod legs. And I took a hot glue gun and put like a half-pound weight or a quarter-pound weight at the base of the tripod so it's be negatively buoyant. And I just set it on a rock, and I would do all the skills in their curriculum. And I'd video myself. And I go, oh, well, the harness is like this. And wow, oh yeah, my ankles are wrong, or I need to trim my tanks. And I just self-taught and self-critiqued. And once I went side mount, man, it really was a game changer. And I liked it because now I could dive alone because I had essentially 100% redundancy. Just to give you an example, you're a tech diver, and anybody who's not tech, this may get lost on you, but I'll try to keep it really simple. I dive my decompression dives, whether I'm solo or with a partner, based on the ability to decompress on pure air bottom gas without decompression gas required. Now, that doesn't mean I dive without it. So I'll dive with 3 11 liters. Here in Asia, there are 11 liters versus, I can't remember now. I lost my mind. So the standard tanks that you get out here, I think are 11-liter tanks. Yeah. So I'll dive both my side mount tanks to around 80 to 100 bar a piece. And I don't care where my dive profile is. I don't care what my TT, I don't care about any of that. I'm going back to the surface, going to go through my decompression procedures and protocol. If I were to have a catastrophic failure of my decompression gas, which has happened, I know I can decompress on air, so I'm good. And that type of conservative nature combined with all this extra gas makes diving for me so much fun because now I'm not limited to a 50-minute dive while the guy just throws up his torn up, bleached out SMB to get picked up and they smile at me. You know, I'm like, we just got down here. What the fuck? Because most of the dives I like to do are close to like 2-hour dives. If you're doing from 20 meters to maybe 50 in that zone, right? And you're down for 55 minutes, you're going to have a TTS of about, depending on how much you got pressed, but let's say you're intelligent about it, you're going to have a TTS of time to service, by the way. In other words, like you have this obligation where you have to off-gas your nitrogen. Nick, you're going to be able to, you'll be decompressing for like 45 minutes, 42, 47 minutes. That's an hour and a half dive right off the bat. And then sometimes I'll just sit there at like 4 meters and stare at a ribbon eel and just wait for it to do something. Like if you're really patient, you stare at one thing and not try to watch everything because that's what most divers do. I know I did. But you just look at one thing for a while. Like look at a ribbon eel or a blue striped cleaner fish and stare at that for 5 breaths. You're going to see something happen you never saw before. And so you get 2 or 3 dive like ecosystems in one dive. You can't do that with a single tank. That's why I went to side mount. And I thought, if I ever wanted to go to caves, I'm like 50-50 about. I'm really split. Like there's no marine life. It's a fucking hole full of water. Now that hole can be beautiful, but it's a hole.
There's an appealing aspect for sure.
Horses for courses, right? If you're not enjoying yourself, don't do it. It's like climbing. The world's best climber is the one that's having the most fun. It's not the highest peak or the hardest peak. It's like if you're not having a good time, why are you doing it? It's not like you're helping anybody. Yeah. So for diving on that aspect, the longer dives with more gas increase my bottom time because it's the same amount of work, really, if you think about it, to go from land to get in the water. On average, it's the same amount of work. But the amount of time you get to spend underwater, well, now you start doing that math, if that makes sense. Hey, look, these are just my opinions. people will disagree and hey, don't agree with everything I say or have my same opinion as me. That's fine. I'm just saying, hey, like this is when I'm in the water, why I get in the water, what gets me jazzed. And I hope, I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I'm just sharing a point of view that I hope other people enjoy and get inspired by.
Sidemount in general is how I like to dive if possible. And one of the most appealing things about places in Bali, obviously, especially the Amet area, is the fact that you can do a lot of shore diving and you can go out there on your own or with your group and say, hey, this is the dive that I'm going to do. You're not, like, hey, we're meeting here at this time. The car leaves at this time. We're going to be in the water by this time. We're out of the water at this time. We're back at the shop at this time. It's like, no, you go, you grab your tank, you go and you do the dive that you want to do. You enjoy the dive that you want to enjoy. You pop up, obviously, according to your plan, and it's more on your terms. And that's what I absolutely love about certain areas out there, is because it's you could do a lot of shore diving, and I fucking think it's the best thing in the world.
I agree. Honestly, I'm with you on that. I'm not a control freak, but I'm very suspect on people doing their job, because over the last 30 years in the different fields I've worked in, most people don't do their job. And the last thing I want to do is go to the surface and the boat's not there.
It happens way.
Oh, dude.
It happens a ton.
Hey,
like a
true story.
shitload.
Listen to this. 2016, I was working on the island of Java, and I was taking these kind of like 3-day trips out here to Bali. And I went off to John and Sue's own World Diving on Lembongan, okay? And I went out with their crew. Now, I am, a dive tourist at this point, and I'm totally good with that. I know my role, right? I'm borrowing their gear. They're guiding me to have a good time, so I'm going to pay to play. Like, I'm good with that. Every dive there is a rip and drift dive, which was new to me. I'd never really done drift diving before or dealt with really strong currents. So I was like, hey, I'm the new guy. Just show me how to do it right, okay? So we end up finishing our dive, and we're going out on a place called Shipwrecks, which is a famous reef that back in 1999, I actually surfed, which is really cool. Neat piece of history there. And we're going along, and there's 2 divers and a guide, and they're going out to the Indian Ocean on the express ride. And so we picked them up, and I'm like, man, yeah, that's a tip off. Right.
No, it happens. It's almost like unreported cases of DCS, right? Like, it happens all the fucking time. Nobody talks about it. It's the same thing with divers just being not left, but like, where's the boat? Or fuck, the boat driver being like, where's my divers?
I think that's why the more remote and the more demanding the dive area, the more you ask yourself, how's this going to kill me? It's just a good idea, right? Especially like if you come out here, which I encourage everybody to come out and dive the Komodos. And, people, just so everybody knows, you don't have to dive on one of those really expensive live aboard boats. It's not required. It's the same fucking ocean, everyone. It's not like, oh, you're in that special boat. Well, all the fish are going to come to you now. It's not like that. There's a dive center I go out of. Again, no skin in the game, not advertising. I've just found them to be extremely thorough. They have their act together, and the prices are just so reasonable. It's Scuba Junkies, and it's all just laid out. It's super plug and play. Just pick your number of days. You will not go hungry. I had a great time. It was epic, man. So, but you need a guide, and you need people to know what they're doing, because those currents ain't no joke, man. Like zippity-doo-dah day. That's when you need intelligent people. And the currents are actually what brings so much marine life, is the mixing of the nutrients in the water. But if you're shore diving, there's so much great diving right offshore. So many places in Indonesia and around the world. That's why I got a DPV. When I bought my first one, I was like, I just want to leave shore and just go around. And then I was like, when I got it, I was like, oh my God, yes. Bah.
I know,
and then,
I need to get one.
Oh man. And for me, it was also great because I bought a third-party product so I could put a compass on it, because I know how to do time speed computations because of being in the military. You're required to do underwater navigation, not like you learn in PADI, but like literally you have to count and turn again and be able to navigate yourself through a maze underwater. And so I built a tack board underwater with a time little slate. I don't use it because I don't need to do it anymore, but it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. The idea of coming here and shore diving and kind of doing it on your own pace, to me, it's just so therapeutic, and you know who you're diving with, which is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's another huge thing is it's not just a random group of strangers, which can be fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's one of the many aspects of diving that I love. It's kind of the when I started this podcast, I'm like, oh, I love showing up at a dive site, a dive center. You're paired up with other divers. You're chatting with them, get to know them. I've made some amazing friendships that way. I mean, essentially, like almost everybody I speak to on the podcast is like, hey, we met through diving. But let me ask you another random question, kind of like to circle back a little bit. You started on closed circuit, found your way to open circuit. Is there any more closed circuit in your future?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open circuit now, and I'd love to go to closed circuit. It just comes down to, in full transparency, I have a pension that I live on, and that's all. I decided to buy DPVs and improve my side mount tool sets. I bought some extra equipment and made some custom adjustments and custom parts. I've also had to repair my DPVs twice, which is really pisses me off. Given how expensive they are, they shouldn't fucking break. Hello? God damn it. So that's where I decided to spend my money. And I'm glad I chose that because my dives open circuit are just freaking mind-blowing, And to top it off, on open circuit, I can spend a lot of time at 45 meters, no problem. I'm not worried about the effort of breathing. In fact, I've spent so much time there that my breathing technique is really honed in and really well. My sac rate's so low because I'm technically just getting hauled through the water. And there's speeds with the DPV, so I don't like to go fast with the DPV. First, the DPV batteries drain fast. And second, the whole point is to see shit. And if you're just like, your mask is going to get ripped off when you turn your head, that's not good. So I'd love to go to a rebreather for sure. Oh my God, yeah. And probably the two that are, well, the one that is technically absolutely mind-blowing, and I've seen it, and I've played with it a little bit, is the FXCCR, the new chest mount. The reason why is that thing packs up in the freaking bag. I was blown away, man. Like that fits in your carry-on.
Yeah.
I was just like, hell, and I really looked at the assembly. Just to also, I didn't mention this before, but after I graduated from dive school, I went back to my platoon. And then my platoon did a fairly extensive dive program in-house. And I was one of the lead, kind of took the lead on everything. After that was done, Draeger, the people that make the rebreathers, had a Draeger tech course. And so I attended the tech course. So I really learned how the rebreather works, how to rebuild it, troubleshoot it, repair it, and put it back together. So I've looked at a lot of different rebreathers over the time. And granted, this rebreather that I'm talking about, the old LAR5, it's very simple. Okay, super, super simple. When you start looking at it, like the new rebreathers now are far more complicated. But, I kind of go along with, something I used to say when I was a big wall climber, the best gear is no gear. Can you not bring that? So when I looked at this chest mount rebreather, I went, this is it, man. Everything here is 100% necessary. And if they could streamline it more, they did. And I was very impressed with it. Totally. And then recently, I might do some time on the Liberty side mount.
It's a nice unit. It's a very nice unit.
It's just really, really expensive. So yeah. I'm just going to have some experience using it. I don't know if I would ever purchase one. It's like way out of my price range. I'm going to have to like get a day job or something, which at my age, I'm like really opposed to. And I don't play well with others in groups. So, but that's the reason, in answer to your question, for me, diving is about having fun. And also, I tell this to people that ask me a lot about diving. I said, the whole point of diving is to go and do something, to see something. It's not just to be super good underwater and have a cool piece of equipment, to me, right? That's just kind of like somebody that jacks up their truck but never gets muddy. It's like it's superfluous. It's supposed to, in my opinion, diving should be an enjoyable, life-enriching exercise that makes one feel alive and enriches the life experience. The tools are just tools. It's like, nobody gets excited about a handsaw.
Maybe some people.
Maybe there might be some people, they're tool nerds.
Ron Swanson. But let me throw out this last question for you before I let you go. I always like to end on a advice question, and I know this is kind of we spoke about it just a little bit, and I know there's a lot. I mean, you could definitely do a whole podcast on this question that I'm going to ask, but we'll keep it specific to diving. So someone that is military background, military trained, that became a diver in the military, introduced to the underwater world, is now transitioning to the sport recreational diving world. And they're, dealing with those challenges because I'm sure it's vastly different. What is the best piece of advice that you could give to somebody who is about to partake in their first recreational fun dive coming out of a high stress, essentially a military background of diving? What is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person?
I would find a dive instructor that's a civilian and a good one, like someone that comes recommended and vetted. Ask them to take you on 1 or 2 dives and show you the way of recreational diving. Because recreational divers, if you're renting gear, they probably use a yoke for a stage. Military doesn't. Learning how to actually do buoyancy, a trim at all these different depths, military doesn't necessarily do that very well, in my experience, because we're so shallow. The degree of variance is so small. Once you get your kit set, you never worry about it. But if you go down to 30 meters and you're down to 5 meters, man, like the degree of technical skill to maintain your trim and hover is vastly demanding. And to humble yourself. Look, you're really good at doing military diving, but that's not the same, right? And if you're really good as a military diver and you're such a badass, then if nothing's above you, then nothing's below you. So just go, hey, show me the way, Obi-Wan. Be quiet, shut your mouth. Let them know that you have military training, that you're really comfortable in the water, but you want to get recreational diving and need to learn the recreational ways. That way, that little bit of time and money investment becomes a force multiplier as you continue to dive as a recreational diver. And yeah, there's some really hard things. Like for me, I was used to really big, long dive briefs because it was a complicated thing. You got 6 guys, you're going to do this. And that's the dive. Then after the dive, then you've got a assault mission brief that goes after that. So when I was a civilian diver, some guy pulls out this cartoon map of the dive site and goes, okay, this and this, it was 3 minutes, and I had a fucking anxiety attack. And I'm like, what the shit? What? Who's in charge here? Who's my dive buddy? Does my dive buddy know what he's doing? I mean, I was really wound up, and I'm like, well, okay, maybe this is how they roll. And I just humbled myself and just said, okay, all right, cool, But in terms of any advice to any diver in the world, I would say a couple things, actually, Nick. One, if you're going to rent gear, really look at it. I rented some gear one time for a friend of mine, and I'm glad I looked at it. I'm like, dude, this hasn't been serviced in 2 or 3 years. I said, I want a different regulator. And I took a set of pliers and ripped the mouthpiece off and I had to service the rag to get it to work. This is in Jordan, right? And then the second thing is take the time to learn what you're looking at. It'll make the dive much, much more enjoyable. And to look around. A lot of people just stare at the bottom. Part of it's that they're sensory overloaded because they're in such a foreign environment. But look around. Look out into the deep blue. You never know what might just swim in to take a look at you and then swim away. I've seen a scalloped head, hammerhead, had a huge school of trevally swim by me at breakneck speed. And if I were looking down at the coral, I never would have saw it. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. And, here on Bali, we get a lot of eagle rays, which are just so beautiful. I've seen a giant ocean manta ray at 52 meters swim by this big balmy rock and just do this long arc swim around me. It was so dark, my GoPro even couldn't see it, because it just blends in. It was just amazing. Knowing what you're looking at, knowing what fascinates you about certain behaviors. And I think that really becomes apparent because the people that make Blue Planet movies, these camera operators actually study and learn marine life animal behavior so that they know what to look for and to get that particular shot to show that animal's behavior. And all these fish do different things and have their own qualities. Same with the corals. That coral's dead. Well, maybe it died because it was old, fucking they die. Or maybe it got killed by another coral. It's not all coral bleaching. It's not all runoff, right? So learning what you're looking at and making sure that you have decent dive gear I think those are the two things any diver should really, really know about. Like if you go do the Lust for Rust, you get a huge briefing on the ship that you're going to dive. If you're going to do some of the dives out of Komodo, those guides are also, pseudo-naturalists. They know a lot about the marine life. Like, okay, so the reason why those fish are here is because of these smaller fish. But these smaller fish are actually here to spawn. So those fish that they're actually not going to eat those fish. They're going to eat the fish's eggs. Oh, that's fascinating. So knowing the marine life, I think, has tremendous value. And that's why if you have a little GoPro and you're videoing stuff, bring up the GoPro and then go online and go, what kind of fish is that? And you can just do self-study. You don't have to like take a course. That's my feedback. Training, all the rest of that stuff,
Yeah.
if you want training, go train.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Nick, that's one of the benefits of the shore dives that you were talking about, is because you're not doing a boat, you're not paying this exorbitant amount of money. You're just going to walk offshore and do some training.
Yeah. Oh, it cuts costs hugely. Like, it's insane. Your time is way, way better spent. I'm such a fan of shore diving now that I don't, I do like going off on, I guess it just depends on the type of diving you're doing, right? But yeah. Don, man, I absolutely appreciate you taking your time and coming onto the podcast today. It's been absolutely amazing. And next time I will make it probably back over there to your neck of the woods, most likely in the next few months for sure. And I will. Well, you guys are coming up on raining season, right? I think it ends in March.
No rush, man. I would definitely wait until March or April.
Yeah, well, that's most likely when it'll be, is March or April, because I think it would be fun. I very rarely do the spirit-induced interviews, but I think it would be absolutely fun to sit down and try some of this, well, not even try, have some more homemade run, although I don't know if my liver can handle it.
You know what? I tell you what we'll do. I'll bring all three. I'll bring my vodka, my gin, and my rum, and we'll just have some cocktails. Comment on the cocktails a little bit, and then we'll talk about some dives. Maybe, it'd be really cool. Why don't I get you on one of my DPVs and we do a couple of DPV dives together?
Yeah, that would be, yeah. We'll set it up, and no, this is, yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it, and this will be a first of many recordings. So no, it's been amazing, man. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for coming on to the podcast today.
Man, I'm honored and I'm excited to have been a guest. Thanks a lot, Nick.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.